Beginning with our
Yeah.
first question from where you are. So, what is happening in Canada and who is to blame for it? The Indian government has recently given a guidelines. I mean, you give us the first-hand account of what actually is happening and who is to be blamed for it.
Are you referring to the referendum that was held here by the
Yes,
Khalistanis?
yes, sir. Yes.
Well, they've been quite well entrenched for a few decades, and uh, they face no opposition, especially from the Indian community, which is non-Sikh. Uh, they 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 are simply docile and don't participate in any political issue. They seem to be more concentrated with their domestic affairs or their family or their well-being, and so they usually are caught off guard. Whereas the Sikh community has been here, including many Hindus and Muslims, since the early 1900s. The first arrivals were on British Columbia, and the gentleman who was at that time um, lobbying for them in 1913 when the Japanese ship Komagata Maru came here and they were not allowed to offload was a gentleman called Hussein Rahim. Though people say it's not his real name, but there has been a presence from the what was once British India to Canada on the west coast for a pretty long time, uh, 19 well, almost over 100 years. So the presence is there. The politicization of the community uh, towards, uh, especially the Sikh nationalists who uh, claim to wish to get Khalistan carved out of India. Uh, they have a long presence here, and they are helped by the Pakistan government through the consulate in Vancouver, where only, I think, day before yesterday, the Council General met with the leaders of the Khalistanis in British Columbia. And they have a hand in it because the Pakistani community is not very much there in British Columbia, which is Vancouver. Yet we have a consulate there.
Simultaneous incidents are going on in UK and where there's a clash has been reported. So, is there a question that are these countries becoming a new battleground for Indian communities' rivalries abroad?
Well, they have always been a sort of a love-hate relationship between those who are Pakistani uh, South Asians who are Muslim or Indian Muslims and the largely Hindu but very silent community in Hindus from India or primarily from Gujarat and Punjab, but even from Tamil Nadu and Kerala, but to various degrees of participation in politics. The Sikh community is fairly active in commanding and turning the discourse towards what they wish to be. So even the opposition Conservative Party, then number two guy is Turban Sikh. I use the term Turban Sikh because there are a very large number of Sikhs who are not in that category. Prominent among them is Ujjal Dosanjh, who was the premier of British Columbia and once a health minister, and who was beaten up by, survived an attack by, very violent Khalistanis. So they're all types of people that are in Canada. But you can't. What happened in Leicester in UK or what happened here in the referendum, they're not sort of related in any manner. the Leicester event was primarily a Hindu-Muslim or a Pakistani-Indian incident, whereas the referendum that took place, so-called referendum, last week was, over 100,000 Sikhs primarily. In one could have, people say, why didn't you go and also vote and vote no? But because these referendums have no legal bearing on them. One can sniff the interference of Pakistan in what is happening over there. So
I get you completely, sir. So the other question that's trending today and what our audience wants and expertise of you is what's happening in Iran? The country that we saw in 50 years has gone from bikini to burqa. So what's your take into this?
well, the bikini is no measure of a woman's progress. Some of the dumbest right-wing women would be in a bikini, and some of the most prominent progressive ones, we've never seen them in. I don't think there's a photograph of Rosa Luxemburg ever on the beach prancing in a bikini. So that measure is not valid. The fact is that Iran is a dictatorship of the clergy, where only a black turban person can be the supreme leader. And when I say black turban, it means someone of Arab ancestry. So in Persia, a Persian cannot be the supreme leader. That is just one aspect, but it's a dictatorship of the theocracy. And there are times when these women being stifled as mere appendages to men will be rejected by women. There were times when there was a suffragette movement in the UK. Well, perhaps this is one of a more serious kind, where women are saying, you can't control my body, or you do not have the right to tell me that just because my hair shows, you get sexually aroused. So you need to see some doctors, perhaps, or take some detoxification medicine. There's something definitely wrong if people claim that they're aroused sexually by someone's hair. That means most men should be careful, because we also have a gay population. They might get aroused watching my hair or your hair. So it's so medieval and primitive that, and especially now that a woman has died simply because, as a Kurdish woman, she came as a tourist to Tehran. And because some of her hair was showing, she was arrested by the morality police, who I believe anybody who serves as morality police needs to see a doctor. They might be the people who need medical attention. I can't even conceive of someone being a morality police officer in where I live. There is a sort of a community of Muslim women who are in complete burqas in Toronto, and at the same time, at the closest intersection, there are young girls in fairly skimpy outfits, but you don't have people getting raped simply because somebody's hair was showing or somebody's body was doing it. We have the gay pride parades about 5 minutes from my home, where a lot of people are showing off their nude bodies, and they just pass away. You don't hear of women or men being attacked simply because this body was naked, let alone that the hair was showing. I don't know how a hair triggers sexuality. I don't see the connection. But for some mullahs, that may very well be, but that means if most of men around the world are not worried about hair, then this clique that says hair is a sexual trigger should see physicians. There might be medicine that might help the mullahs tone down, because if that is your condition, you're not fit to rule a government. You should be put in some mental asylum where psychiatrists might help you, say, and give you, I don't know, I'm not a physician, but how does it matter that 99% of the world's men don't get sexually aroused watching women's heads? Otherwise, there'd be in Canada, the United States, or in Europe, there would be widespread sexual crimes taking place.
Yes, sir, you're right.
Nobody on the beach uh, uh, gives a rat's. I mean, forget about this is TV. I won't repeat that word. But people go on with their lives. How someone else is dressed, how is it my concern? If you're wearing a dhoti, or if you're wearing running shorts, or if you're uh, running barefoot like the Fijian cricketers, what is it to somebody else? As long as you're not causing a law and order situation, and if you believe that you trigger this, then you need to see a doctor, change your diet, something. Maybe should just go on a vegan streak and calm down your nerves. But when I see women in Karnataka demanding hijab, when either they don't know, they don't read the news, or they are not aware of what's going on in Iran, these are Muslim women who have seen the practical application of Sharia law in a very state form. It's not just some Deoband fatwa that is telling them that. This is the president of the country, the supreme leader, the legislator. You can't even run for election in Iran unless you're authorized to run by the supreme leader who nobody elects. So you can imagine, as I told you, if you're white turbaned, you can't be supreme leader. Just imagine if somebody passed legislation saying that if you were of Indian ancestry, you couldn't be India's president. You had to be from Temur's bloodline or Khilji's bloodline to be the president of India. People would be simply outraged. Well, the fact remains, some people in India were never outraged. 800 years of Khiljis and Temurs and Mughals were ruling. But in this day and age, you can't be running affairs based on medieval laws. If you've signed on, if you're a member of the United Nations, you've signed on to the UN Convention on Human Rights, then you adhere to the 1948 convention that you signed. There's a Helsinki addendum to it from 1970, which all members of the UN have signed as well. Either you say, I'm signing off, or you stick to the rules and apply the laws that apply to you if you're a member of the United Nations or a signatory of the 1948 UN Human Rights Convention.
In case there is a coup, what India should watch out for? Is it going to be a end to the standoff that's going to be in Ladakh, or is it going to be further more escalation?
Well, India should be prepared. Anyway, it has a very long frontier with China. It is India is home to the Dalai Lama, and has a policy about what it considers Tibet to be occupied territory, which is universally accepted that China is. So it is everyone's concern, but China is a product of what United States investments made it to be. And so China today is not a communist country. China is today an extension of United States capitalism, which was done primarily to undermine the Soviet Union. So all those objectives have been reached. So now the dictators of China have themselves to blame or to manipulate who rules who runs the army, who runs the PLA, who runs the Communist Party. It's no Communist Party. I don't think any Chinese ever has read Karl Marx. It's just not there. They are a state that considers Chinese to be the most superior of humanity. Wherever they go, they sink the country into debt and deprivation, whether it's Ethiopia, whether it's Pakistan, where they even tried their hands in Sri Lanka, and they're trying to undermine India by, manipulating Myanmar and Bangladesh as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think India's strength lies in its democracy and its ability to face these threats. India is not a pushover like 1962, uh, though many of its critics would like to believe such. Many in the liberal threshold of Indian politics are the worst enemies of India because they consistently portray it as a backward state where minorities are suffering, and you see it is mostly Indian-born academics in the United States who push that agenda, and that is why sometimes in the international field, the Indian perspective or Indian point of view doesn't get across. But I think China will hardly have any effect on it. It has its own issues. It is facing another capitalist rival, which is Japan, right across the seas. And Taiwan is an issue where the Americans are involved. So its hands are tied in what it wishes to do. It might try here and there to push over 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers, and then
how long until the end of the Ladakh standoff, sir? It's already been 14 months. Long months.
Yeah, well, let it be. You do have an army. It's unfortunate that Indian were asked to serve 4 years in the military, and all the young men were concerned was their pension. So they came out on the street. You can't just let Indians off the hook. They are primarily concerned about personal wealth and personal. The NRIs or the Indians who live in Britain or United States, they're not concerned about India at all. It's one single Indian characteristic that is its weakness is that its citizens abroad refuse to say they are Indian. You have an American vice president who is Indian, and she said, "No, I'm black. I got nothing to do with Hinduism." And we knew she was in which mandir she used to go to in Montreal when she lived here 14 years in Canada. So when Kamala Hassan is ashamed of being an Indian, and about 200 CEOs in United States who are of Indian ancestry simply act as if, oh, did something happen in India? Oh, I don't know. My stocks are going high. I'm making my hundreds of millions. Why should I care? You'd say that to a Pakistani, he'll get 100,000 people in Washington, D.C. at a day's notice. The Sikhs will do that. The Indians, and primarily when I say Indian, I mean the Hindu community is not concerned about anything other than their selfish needs. Whatever their heritage is, which is exemplary, they have been home to every runaway minority, from the companions of Prophet Muhammad to the Zoroastrians to Saint George Christians who settled down in Kerala and were surprised at what is Christmas. They didn't know that the Europeans had inserted their festival into Christianity. So, okay, what is Santa Claus? They didn't know that. But anyway, India has its history. It's the last surviving ancient civilization. I don't think Indians are aware of that. So Indians know which universities are the best for an MBA. Indians don't know, that they are named after a river which is not in their command.
The next question, since you are talking, you have mentioned about the Indians not knowing, and I have seen most of your interviews in which you say that the biggest weakness of Indians is that they don't know what is their strength. Right? Is that what you're trying to say?
It is. I don't think they're aware. Neither does the education let them get aware. They've done a wonderful job in building the institutions of education and in science and technology, even archaeology, one would say. But as far as a civilizational issue, there is a guilt. Anytime somebody mentions Hindutva, people react as if a curse word has been, uttered in front of honorable, upper class kitty party women, as if it was the F word.
Yes.
Whereas the fact the Indian Supreme Court has outlined what is Hindutva.
Hmm.
Savarkar's 100-page book, I don't think anybody has read it. I mean, I had a few Indian friends at home yesterday, retired civil servants.
Hmm.
They saw Savarkar's book Hindutva for the first time.
Okay.
So if you don't know what it is, if nobody's read it, how it has become the cuss word? How are people saying in Leicester that, oh, BJP RSS brought Hindutva ideology? I don't think people there are many people, overseas Indians, who know what is Hindutva. The Indian Supreme Court has defined what it is when it was taken over there. And if you are more curious, just pick up that book. It's not big. I mean, Savarkar wrote it on the walls of his jail cell while he was in Andaman Islands.
Yes.
And his cell would get whitewashed every month, and he would just take a cooked piece of coal and write on it, and then memorize it. Anyone can be a student or admirer or critic of Hindutva if they knew what it was. But you can't be against Hindutva without knowing anything about it or having read anything. I have not met yet anyone who has studied or even read the book Hindutva by Savarkar. They only know that, there are three words they use: RSS, Hindu right wing. There's a Hindu supremacist. I don't know what that means. I've never met Hindu supremacists. But it is used, and nobody comes to counter-argue this.
Okay.
Not as vigorously as I do, but certainly there should be people who get offended. As soon as you say, oh, well, you wish to impose Sharia in Canada, you'll have all the entire Muslim world and 55 countries, including Qatar, lecturing India over what Nupur Sharma said. And what Nupur Sharma said was exactly what the Islamic law says. She basically read what Islamic literature says. She didn't come up with her own words, but she's being left out there, hanged out to dry. Well, I'm sure the Indian government cares for protection, because 11 people have been beheaded on that charge. Gustakh Rasool kiye ki saza sartan se juda. What? Every Friday we pray against the Qawmul Kafirin and pray to Allah to give us victory over the who are the Qawmul Kafirin? The Hindus and the Jains. That's who they are. The Jews or the Christians, everyone is a kafir for the Muslim. And we sit there in their homes, in their neighborhoods, and migrate there and curse them.
The next question that we are wanting to talk to you on geopolitics is about the going away of USA, its forces from Afghanistan, and leaving it to collapse under the Taliban. And the Afghanistani forces, the army, the president not fighting up to the Taliban. I mean, that was a very big surprise. And then the USA later gave on a statement that if your country is not willing to fight, you countrymen are not willing to fight the Taliban, why do you expect the USA people to fight for you guys? And it was very tragic that there was no uprising from the army of the Afghanistan.
Why? The Americans, since when did they know how to fight? Did they fight in Vietnam? Did they fight in the Second World War? They only came in when they realized that the Red Army was rushing towards Berlin. 30 million Russians died in the Second World War. How many Americans died? They make good movies. As kids, we always thought it was the Americans versus the Germans. They never joined the fight. They were funding the Nazis. Britain also. There was no fight. The real objective was, let the Germans finish off the communists, and then we will all live happily on earth. Their problem was the rise of this new phenomena, which today is reflected in the politicization of the Social Democrats in whether it's the Northern European countries of France or Germany. Well, today Italy is voting, and it might return a right-wing female prime minister. But generally speaking, whether it's the Spanish Civil War, where the international the people from India went to fight there. It was an entire international army that fought against the fascists. And similarly in Europe. But the Americans go wherever they wish to. 9/11 is not the first time that something happened. In New York, 9/11 is the day when United States company AT&T, with the support of the US Armed Forces, overthrew the elected government of Chile in 1973. So President Allende was bombed in his own palace, and General Pinochet was brought in as the dictator and wiped out an entire history of Chilean history, which today has come back, and a young left-wing leader has been elected over there as president. So the US shouldn't be talking about how many countries it has liberated. It should talk about its backyard of how many countries it made into banana republics. So we don't need lectures from anyone whose economy was developed on free land and free labor. If you could promise me that I would get a free land and the labor would be supplied free by the British from Africa, with African slaves sold by the Arabs to the British and transferred, anyone can make a success out of that business. The cost, business की cost ही ये है, land और labor, बोले ये तो आपको free में देंगे. अच्छा, बाकी आप क्या कर सकते हैं? अरे भाई, जब बाकी करना क्या है?
Yes,
you know, तो वो भी ढूंढने निकले थे इंडिया को, पहुंच गए अमेरिका. तो वो always bear that in mind. All these guys went there to plunder India.
Okay.
So we were lucky they went in the wrong direction.
Yes.
So United States has no basis to say that we came to liberate Afghanistan or not. They didn't come there for anything. They wanted to bleed the USSR and the Red Army, and they didn't want to do it themselves. So they made the Pakistanis, who were always the foot soldiers of the US. They were members of SEATO and CENTO, which were pacts like NATO in Central Asia and Southeast Asia. And they had the military base in northern Pakistan at Beit, from where they used to fly spy flights of the U-2 over the USSR. You're too young to remember, but if you look up, you'll find that there was a trial in Moscow of a gentleman called Gary Powers, who was shot down, and he took off from Peshawar at an air base called Beit. This is 1962, when Khrushchev said, I'll wipe out Peshawar from the face of this map. There won't be Peshawar anymore. And yet Pakistani said, but told by the Americans, no, don't worry, we'll build a new Peshawar. So they built a new Peshawar, they built a new Afghanistan, and they went back happily ever after. The Americans are primarily interested in which football player has signed up for which team. That is what interests them. Otherwise, the American population doesn't know what they've done in Guatemala or Honduras or Nicaragua or Cuba or whatever. Nothing matters.
So the general American may not know, but their diplomacy, polity is very savvy. I was myself wondering, right, that they are experts, because it's impossible for one single president to know so much geopolitics. Their missions and these diplomats that they have trained over the years, running the global affairs.
It's not the diplomats. You can bribe diplomats. You will notice something very strange, that no American diplomat to Pakistan ever has anything to say about Pakistan's dictatorship, because the Pakistanis have learned how to bribe diplomats. There is a concept in Pakistan called lifafa journalism that applies to lifafa diplomats as well. They go in brown packages, they come with cash in it, and they live happily ever after.
It reminds me of a scene from pre-independence era, when the British would come in India. They were called nabobs, and they would go back living a happily life.
That's how they got the Kohinoor also, because they took the young Dilip Singh over there,
yes,
and turned him into a Christian. He's still saying, Bhaiya, mera heera to de do wapis. No, a queen will die, but that heera will stay on top. Did you notice that throughout this? And so many of the aunties of India was teary-eyed. रानी मर गई है अल्लाह. उसकी death तक Kohinoor was like a light tower on that Taj, saying, I am Great Britain when I was great. I am Great Britain when I was great. भैया जाने दो, हमारा कोहिनूर वापस दो तुम. तो अमेरिका का भी ऐसा ही है. Stable governments like, Libya were toppled. Now they are in a lifelong civil war between 2-3 camps. Turkey has its own colonial past. People are reluctant to mention, but Turkish colonialism lasted 600 years. British may have lasted 200 years, but Turkey gets away with it because they're bumbling fools when they came to their colonialism. They didn't leave Turkish language anywhere where they ruled. There was 600-700 years in Arabia, not a single Arab speaks Turkish. How they enforce their culture is by banning the speaking of Kurdish language in Istanbul or Turkey or anywhere else. So, our understanding of the world comes from how we refuse to dissect what is inside all the histrionics that come from American television networks. There are a few people, if one follows, they will give you an alternative view, like the wonderful gentleman from Vermont, the senator. There are wonderful people in the US who are enlightened. You have to give them credit for all the scientific innovations and their ability to invest in that science and develop new technologies. But for goodness sake, don't tell us how we should, evolve our societies based on free land and free labor, because no other country had free land and free labor. Yes. Even in Canada, we have, pacts with the Aboriginal Indigenous populations that are implemented, that the Canadian government is still bound. The Assembly of First Nations have their own say in determining which laws apply in what way. There's been a Truth and Reconciliation Commission about how Catholic education affected them. So in some ways, the real model society of, if you can say, Western capitalism mixed with social democracy is the Canadian landmass, where Punjabi, by the way, is the 4th language of the country. That is why all these Pakistanis at every census go out on a campaign. Bhai, don't write Punjabi. Bhai, it is my mother tongue. No. Sikhon ko fayda ho jayega. Oh, aap Urdu likhiye. Have you seen Pakistani Punjabi speak Urdu? It's always a comedy show. They can't even pronounce the word Pakistan. And they took a language from India, which they say Hamara Dushman hai, and imposed it on themselves, saying ye hamari national language hai. Well, anyway, that's another.
Sir, there has been devastating floods in Pakistan, right? But now when there has been loss of lives, devastating flood, why at the UN we are hearing news about they rigging up the Kashmir issue or picking the fight with the India rather than pleading to the natural calamity that is...
they don't consider Sindhis or Baloch as human beings. On day one of Pakistan, Karachi was declared the capital of the country, and only people who spoke Urdu could get a government job. And who were those people? People who came from UP, Bihar, Bhopal, Hyderabad, Dakkan. They would arrive there, sit there, turn the most cosmopolitan city of India into the most rotten city that ever existed. They banned the Sindhi language as if it was, and said, as kids we used to hear, this is the language of the Hindus. They prohibited any study of Raja Dahir. They made Muhammad bin Qasim the first invader of Hindustan by the Arab world as a national hero. By the way, his books are printed in Old Delhi in Urdu.
Yes, sir.
So
near the Jama Masjid, if you take a walk.
Yeah. So you won't be able to read it because it's in Urdu. So you notice that the British contracted out. You should read Mr. Sirula's book as to how the British asked V.P. Menon and Nehruji, when we leave, would you allow us a military base in northwestern India, meaning that part where the Pashtun areas are, near the Wakhan Peninsula? They said no. That's when they went to Mr. Jinnah, who used to live in the United Kingdom, and said, this is the contract, itna paisa milega, tum jaake Pakistan banao. I have a book published in 1941, before the Pakistan resolution was made, which outlines everything as to what Pakistan will be. It's by a name called L. Hamza, E-L. No Pakistani or any Muslim ever spells Al as E-L. So that caught my interest. And I was showing it to some friends last night. It was published in 1941 with exact details of what will do, what will the minerals, where will the railways go, everything was detailed out there. And the page, as you open it, didn't have Mr. Jinnah's picture there. It was Iqbal, whose photograph is there.
The poet.
Sare Jahan Se Acha Wala.
Yes.
He's the only poet who copied his own poetry and plagiarized it to make Chino Arab Hamara, Hindustan Hamara, Muslim Ham, Sara Jahan Hamara. And the Indians sing it today as it is their song. Sare Jahan Se Acha Hindustan Hamara. He copied his own. And he was a Punjabi who never wrote in Punjabi. He was so ashamed of his ancestry. He got upset when Tagore got invited by the Shah of Iran. And he wrote to the Shah, this dark-skinned Bengali, and I am Iqbal Lahori, Persian poet. You never invited me. It didn't dawn to Iqbal that Tagore wrote in Bangla, his mother tongue. You write in the language that you want to please the Iranians or the Arabs. You claim you are not Indian.
So what did the Shah of Iran reply, sir?
He didn't reply. Tagore even went to visit Iqbal.
Okay.
Aap naraz hai, kya ho gaya? He refused to let him in his home.
Okay.
And Iqbal ki nani was a Sikh. So he would visit his grandmother in secret in Amritsar.
Okay.
और किसी ने कह नहीं देना मैं उधर जा रही हूँ. Jinnah's grandfather was Hindu.
Yes.
Everyone. So if you are ashamed of your ancestry, well, you can't make a country that would survive. That is why everybody in Pakistan or in Delhi, you will notice how many Qurayshis there are. Quraysh is a tribe of Mecca. There are no Qurayshis in Mecca. There are no Qurayshis in Baghdad, in Damascus, in Tehran, in Cairo, in Karachi, anywhere. All the Qurayshis are in Delhi. भाई किधर से आ गए तुम लोग? मक्का में जब कुरैशी नहीं है तो दिल्ली में कैसे इतने कुरैशी हैं? Qurayshi means you're coming from the Prophet's tribe.
Okay.
So it's like a traveler's check. You can cash it, without having currency. You match your two signatures. I don't know if people use traveler's checks anymore, but this is like a traveler's check. I'm Sayyid. So I'm an F-16 among Muslims. Sayyid means I'm not an Indian, but you Indian should respect me because I'm living in India. And I'm Sayyid because I'm from the family of the Prophet.
Okay. Sir, recently, there is one more thing that has happened only one day back. The Islamic Cooperation has called for the restoration of the Article 370. What's your take on that?
Oh, you mean the Islamic Council? The
Yes.
50 members?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
I think they should all implement Article 370 within their own constitutions and to their own minorities, and then come to India and say, look, it works.
Okay.
Every Muslim country is occupying some other Muslim land. I'll give you 4 main examples. Pakistan occupies Balochistan. Indonesia occupies West Irian. Morocco occupies Western Sahara. Turkey occupies Kurdistan.
Mm-hmm.
पहले अपने घर में तो देखो, कहते हैं ना गिरबान में झांक के देखो भाई.
Mm-hmm.
You think that Yemen 500,000 people died because there were Hindus there? किसने मारा? There were no Jews there. There were no Hindus. That thing you hear in India, Hanud or Yahud, हमारे दुश्मन हैं. अरे उधर यमन में कहाँ से आ गए हिंदू और यहूदी? You think in Syria 500,000 are dead? Who killed them? Who killed the family of Prophet Muhammad? Did some Hindu come? No, the Hindus came to save them. क्या कहते हैं, Hussaini Brahmins. The companions and descendants of the Prophet took refuge in Sindh, under Raja Dahir. And that is why Muhammad bin Qasim came to take them back and try them, because they had killed all the family of the Prophet.
So, but this thing that you're saying, because since I've been reading and we are all fans of you, but this thing has been hugely debated that there is no document supporting that Raja Dahir supported or gave Panah to Muhammad.
Why there is no documentation? There is an entire book about it.
Okay.
Just because it is there in Persian में भी है, सब कुछ है, झूठ बोलते हैं. A Deoband mullah will say that there is an entire institution created whereby a Muslim can lie for the development of his community.
Okay.
It's not a sin. Taqayya जिसे कहते हैं. The Shias are better at that, by the way. The Sunnis have not yet finessed their version of the Apple phone, It's like Samsung and Apple going at each other. So the Samsung has come with the foldable phone, but Apple ne mein nahi aaya abhi. So there is, everyone knows. I mean, I could sit in front of a Muslim and say, really? I mean, you can fool some Hindu or a Sikh and say, oh no, it's a religion of peace. No. It is my duty to invite you to Islam. And if you refuse, then I can declare war on you. You know that?
I don't know.
You, and particularly you, it is my duty as a Muslim to give what they call dawa. And dawa is a word which in Hindi is dawat. वो शादी की दावत देते हैं ना, तो वो word dawa से है. So you will always hear the more pious Muslim use the word dawa. Yeah, brother, I give you dawa. I invite you to come to Islam. No, that is not the right way. You have to tell in an Arabic accent with a guttural accent, brother, I am giving you dawa. And you will say, what is that? What are you giving me? No, it's an invitation. So to purify your soul. So you too can die with me and go to paradise, because I don't see you have a girlfriend. So now I will provide you 72 girlfriends in heaven. A motivation dekhiye aap, कि I have to die before I start to live. And you want to live. So the person who his desire is to live forever, and for that he has to die, is on your borders. Taimur bhi yahi chahta tha. Babur bhi wanted the same. Tipu Sultan also wanted. They're all up there somewhere. I'm sure they're finding no 72 virgins. Bichare घूम रहे होंगे इधर से उधर, किधर है भाई ये?
Yes, sir. So coming back to our very own country, India, sir, there has been a sudden change in demographics and people's mindset. And now the stars that we so much liked for all the years, they are flopping on in their movies and the viewership has greatly decreased. What's your take on this?
There's a different crowd that ran Bollywood, which is called Urduwood nowadays.
Okay.
Who wrote your films. They also came from Pakistan side of the border. Most of them were from Peshawar and Lahore. Even Muhammad Rafi, by the way, was the only Muslim who migrated to India after partition. So, idhar to main phas jaunga. Jaake gaane ga ke aa gaya. The point is that right from the beginning, before partition, from the 30s, because my father was part of the Bollywood gangs, and we migrated from Bombay. We know that all that initial culture was coming from these, whether they were Hindus or Muslims, they were coming from the Punjab side. And the writers were like Javed Akhtar, and we used to think it was one person. वो क्या कहते थे, वो जो अब उनके partner अलग हो गए. But anyway, so
Salman Khan's father. Sir.
I always thought there was one person till I realized there are two, and they don't talk to each other, but that's a different story. The point was that Urdu today still has a hold on India, where if I stood at some intersection and started doing shairi, for example, I can collect 10 people who will just listen to me and admire what a great thinker I am, because I'm speaking in Urdu.
Urdu reels are very famous on social media, sir. People reciting love poems in Urdu are very famous.
Famous?
No, you are saying that you will collect 10 people. There will be more listeners if you speak.
I have tried that. I have tested it. Somebody denied it. I said, "Tu mere naal khade hoke dekh kehte ki honda." We'll speak in Punjabi. Nobody will stop. मैं उर्दू के अंदर 3 लाइनें बोलूंगा. इधर डूबे, उधर निकले, उधर डूबे, इधर निकले. वो तू कहना वाह 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 वाह. मुकर्रर इरशाद. मजमा जमा हो जाएगा. I could say bullshit, and people will say, "Oh my God, यार उर्दू बोल रहा है." वो आपके यहाँ एक इवेंट होता है हर साल, उसका क्या नाम है?
राहत.
हाँ, I couldn't understand this is an Urdu word. I had to ask him, word किया है, रास्ता something, and they descend there as if angels from outer space have come to shower their Urdu, and you will see the upper middle class aunties just saying, Mukarrar. I can't understand as an Urdu speaker. You're sitting there as a Gujarati saying, Mukarrar, Irsad kare bhaiya. It is a devilish way. It's a language in which you can lie with at ease. You cannot lie in Punjabi क्योंकि मुंह से गाली निकल जाती है, दूसरा भाग जाता है. उर्दू में you could abuse someone and that person says, की कह रहे हैं मेरे नाम? अरे ताकि तारीफ कर रहे हैं. Oh, very good, very good. I've seen Gujjus enjoying Urdu poetry who cannot speak Urdu.
Okay.
And when they say, wow, Mukarrar, they look back, कि सही जगह पे वाह वाह कहा है ना, because they need to validate it. So every time an Indian says, वाह वाह, Mukarrar, Irshad, he looks back and says, कि गलती तो नहीं कर रहा हूँ मैं. So it has a demonic control over this elitist attitude that the UP Muslim has. हम लखनऊ के नवाब.
So, so you say that the Indian population has a feeling that Urdu is a superior language,
yes. How else did the Pakistanis committed genocide in Bangladesh?
Okay.
You know what was the basis of the Noon-Nehru Pact, where all migration was stopped from both countries to each other?
No, sir.
All these Urdu-speaking Biharis and UPites were ending up in Bengal. And diluting the Bangla character of East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. And there were riots in Bangladesh. They would come and occupy the main position because they were Urdu speaking. So the jobs went to people who could speak and write Urdu. Same happened in Sindh. There was a slogan in Sindh called Bihari na Khappan. Yani, Bihari will not allow to stay here. They would come, they didn't need a degree, they would have to sign to a committee that हिजरत करते हुए हमारी डिग्री जल गई. उन्होंने कहा अच्छा भाई इनको डिग्री दे दो बीए की. उर्दू तो बोल ही रहे थे. अब imagine a Sindhi who's been living in Karachi for 500 generations. He didn't migrate, so he couldn't have lost his degree, and he can't speak Urdu.
So, but how is this related to the fall in viewership? That our question is that, the people are still not responding or liking the movies of Amir Khan and they are flopping.
That is a rise of what I would call a realization of the Hindu nature of Indian society. You artificially remove the word Hindustan from India, right, in the constitution. And you inserted Bharat and made sure that the word Hindu would be destroyed. So the word Hindu did not disappear because Muslims wanted it. It was because the education minister of India, a gentleman who every Indian thinks is the right type of a Muslim,
Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad,
who was worse than Muhammad Ali Jinnah because he was born in Saudi Arabia, and he thought his speeches, Jinnah was not anti-Hindu by any chance.
Okay, that's a new fact that we are listening from you. He was not anti-Hindu, sir.
He didn't care. He lived in Bombay, bhai. His friends were Hindu. He was brought in by the British as a contract worker to bifurcate, to sell partition, because the Muslim attitude was, it is a suit pehanta hai, bhai. Okay. From Sir Syed Ahmad Khan onwards, the issue was how well dressed he is. Falane Nawab ko dekho yaar, Rani aankhein milti usse. There was a particular fondness that said, we are royalty, Mughals, and British is royalty, and we can equate, but Hindu kya hai? Iska to kuch jaane do yaar. Marathon ki inki army thi kya, jaane do. Ye attitude tha. तो क्वीन विक्टोरिया का ड्राइवर भी था मुसलमान. फिर
yes sir, that story got very famous. There's a movie on that sir.
या उनको कैसे निकाला गया. अच्छा, इनकी क्वीन की भी थे. आपको पता है 16th century 17th century में an Englishman would proudly say that I have a Muslim friend, because up to the 16th century there was nothing in Europe that was not influenced by Islamic scholars, whether it was science, whether it was the Renaissance, the atheism tak Arbon se aayi hai. In Islam it was allowed to question the existence of God. आज पता चला सरतन से जुदा कर देते हैं. इब्ने रुश्द को पढ़े आप, एविरोज को देखिए, अविसीना को देखिए, the founder of the study of sociology, Ibn Khaldun, they were all secular. They even wrote about the stupidity of believing that there was a Noah's Ark and Hazrat Nuh की किश्ती के अंदर सारे जानवर बिठा दिए, फिर सब मर गए और वो कहीं से एक ट्राइब बची, वो सिंध में आके बस गई. ये आपने शायद सुना होगा. But these fables entertained the Europeans, you know. Arabian Nights का concept आपने सुना होगा. Ali Baba and 40 चोर, ये Sinbad the Sailor, ये अपना सिंध की बात कर रहे हो. Okay. और की बात. So there was a charm about what a Muslim was. Muslim was seen as someone who is enlightened. Okay. He can sing, he can dance, he can, you know, he doesn't have, and fundamentally Muslims not those feudal lords with who rule by cruelty. Because essence of Islam was that you don't have to bow to anyone. आपने सर झुकाना नहीं किसी से. That's how it became so fast, so popular. In 100 years it was from Spain to China. So very powerful message that you have nothing to bow to anyone. खलास, कोई सर ऊपर नहीं है, कोई नीचे. वो आप आज और बात है कि जो जाता है पाकिस्तानी जनरल उसके सामने बैठ जाना पड़ता है इमरान खान को.
Sir, because your knowledge is very vast and what you speak is multifold and has a great magnitude, and this talk can go for hours and hours and even days. But now, sir, since out of all that knowledge of yours, the new education policy is coming, and as a historian that you are, I want, from a personal reader's point of view, what hero should we actually include in the history, right? We have heard you speak about Dara Shikoh, we have heard you speak about Raja Dahir, many others, but you know, who should we in history add in the school curriculums that the Indian that you speak about as an ignorant Hindu or an ignorant Indian who doesn't know his strength?
He should center around Mohenjo-daro.
Okay.
Bina Sindh, there is no Hind. Ye samajh lijiye. That is why Sindh is in the Indian national anthem. It is not in the Pakistani national anthem. आपको बेवकूफ क्या बनाए? Ganga, Jamuna, Tehjeeb. Soon I heard the word Tehjeeb, I knew इसमें कोई रैकेट है. ये Tehjeeb word Indian है ही नहीं.
अच्छा.
ये word ही बाहर से आया है.
Okay.
तो ये आपको बेवकूफ बना दिया. अच्छा भाई गंगा जमुना हो गया. वहां भी जहाँ गंगा जमुना मिलती थी उस जगह का नाम रख दिया इलाहाबाद. आप मक्का को रख के, मैं बार बार कहता हूँ, ट्राई तो करे रामगढ़ रखने की कोशिश तो करे. तो द होलीएस्ट सिटी ऑफ इंडिया फॉर हिंदूज वाज कॉल्ड इलाहाबाद. हाउ डम कैन यू बी कि you have your own country, not dependent on an invader, but you choose to call Prayagraj as Allahabad.
But sir, why Mohenjo-daro in particular, you are saying, sir?
Because that's the birthplace of Indian civilization.
Okay.
And you have been taught that no, we didn't get it, therefore it doesn't exist.
So you say that we should still persist. Yes.
This is your origin, bhai.
Mm-hmm.
Being Sindhi is not a caste. Many Indians think that Sindhi is a Hindu caste.
Mm-hmm.
They are not from Hong Kong. They are not millionaires in Delhi. कोई अम्बानी ये नहीं है. Sindh is one of the most ancient places on earth. Dr. Thor Heyerdahl, देखिएगा, गूगल करके देखिए, नॉर्वेजियन एक्सप्लोरर जिसने कॉन्टिकी एक्सपीडिशन बनाई थी. He created a reef boat with 21 international scientists on it and sailed from Basra on the Tigris River and came all the way to the Indus, and then went south and burnt his reed boat on the coast of Ethiopia to protest against the civil war going there. But he came to prove the links between the ancient Sumerians and the ancient Indians. And the link, these 21 scientists from Poland, the Soviet Union, United States, Denmark, usme do Arab bhi the, they all studied or lived on that boat. I accompanied them for 1 or 2 days when they went to Mohenjo-daro. The only off-the-sea place that they visited was Mohenjo-daro. Because that's the only first 2-storied homes with drainage, with a central pool, with a granary, with a playing area. Religious place alag hai, nahane ki alag hai, toilet alag hai. Kahan hai ye? It's 5,000 years old. आप उससे नहीं जोड़ेंगे तो आप कैसे करेंगे? You don't have to occupy it, but you can't just dismiss it. The Pakistanis would like you to dismiss it. They are very happy you bought into the Ganga Jamuna Tehjeeb. The Ganga Jamuna Tehjeeb came much later.
So why do you deny the Ganga Jamuna Tehjeeb, sir? Does it not signify the union of two religions or two brothers?
No, there is no union of two religions. We pray for your destruction. How can there be union of two religions? Every Friday we pray, Ya Allah, Musalmanon ko Qamal Kafirin pe fatah naseeb kare. If you're dumb enough to accept this hate, I don't have to join you. I'll stand up for my rights. I'm a Muslim. I have my primary objective in life is to speak the truth. Why would I buy into what Abul Kalam Azad said, or what Mehbooba Mufti says? She has the audacity to say that the bhajan that has been Muslim kids have been singing for decades should be abolished, and she can get away with it.
Which bhajan, sir?
वो जो मुझे नहीं आता, बट जो श्रीनगर में बच्चे गाते थे, गांधी जी फेवरेट भजन.
अच्छा, ओके, वैष्णव जंतु
जी, वो कैरियर्स को हटा हुआ, अब वो इंडिया में बैठ के कह रही है. और कोई ऐसे करेगा. और प्रोपेगेंडा लिस्टेड में क्या था? बीजेपी एंड आरएसएस और हिंदुत्व वाले आ गए. कोई ये तो पूछे, अरे कमबख्त, तुमने पढ़ा तो है किसी हिंदुत्व को? 100 पेज की बुक है. इंडियन सुप्रीम कोर्ट का डिसीजन क्या है? व्हाट इज हिंदुत्व? आई मीन, आई एम टायर्ड ऑफ फाइटिंग people who are illiterate yet angry at me because I am presenting evidence to them that we are all Hindu, and when we converted to Islam, there's no Quraishi. In all these Quraishis in Delhi and Naqvis and Zaidis and all these Sayyids, why would they come to India? किसी ने निकाला कहीं से तो आए ना यहाँ. So let's study. You didn't come with Taimur. These Central Asians would come, plunder, leave their nouns. You know what is Urdu? It's Bhojpuri with 5,000 Turkish words. खड़ी बोली जो है, जो Fiji में you can hear that.
Okay.
Suriname and Fiji, these are the only 2 countries where undiluted Bhojpuri without Persian involvement in it is still spoken. So there are many Fijians in Canada. You hear that, and it sounds very strange. क्योंकि Indian movies में the Bhojpuri is associated with the villager or the uneducated. And that's very strange. A language doesn't determine how educated you are.
Not at all.
In India, we made that.
Yes.
कि आपको उर्दू नहीं आती तो आप जाहिल हैं. So there's a long way to go, but there's no hurry. वो गीता में ही है ना. You don't need to have any expectations. आप अपना काम करें, वो तो खुद ही आपके कर्म से ही होगा सब. बस ये ना कहें कि इसमें माल कितना मिल रहा है मुझे. हमारी आज की सोसाइटी में ना अपने कितना इसमें 3% तो दियो ना ऊपर से. नहीं चाहिए ऊपर से कितना मिल रहा है.